Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Outlook for October through January. We will first look at recent weather across the Great Basin and also move into the outlook and fire potential for October through January of 2016. Over the last 30 days, we've seen generally above normal temperatures across the Great Basin, especially across Nevada, Utah, and to Wyoming, and also generally very dry conditions across the western half and southern half of Nevada into southern Utah. However, we have seen some scattered amounts of precipitation further north that have brought areas of especially Idaho, western Wyoming, the northern part of Utah, and far northeast Nevada to above normal. If we look back at the entire water year, which goes from October 1st of 2014 through October 1st of this year, we see that we have seen precipitation return to near or even just above normal over southern and southeast Utah, along with parts of Wyoming, into Idaho and the northern half of Nevada, and into parts of the Sierra Front. This is largely due in part to the late spring and summer rains we saw across the region. Now looking at the drought conditions across the Great Basin, despite the wet weather that we've seen off and on over the last several months, which has brought parts of the Great Basin to near normal or above normal precipitation for the water year, we still have significant drought conditions across the area, and these will be in place for several months to come. The worst drought conditions are across the western half of Nevada and to far western Idaho, where we still are seeing extreme to exceptional drought, with moderate to severe drought further east across the rest of the Great Basin. These drought conditions are expected to persist through the end of December, especially over the northern two-thirds of the Great Basin, but we may start to see some improvement over southern Nevada and the southern half of Utah if we start to see moisture associated with El Nino increase through the winter months. Looking at the fuels across the area, some fuels were still critical at the end of September across the western two-thirds of Nevada and into parts of southern Idaho due to well above normal temperatures and dry conditions in recent weeks, and ERCs were even near the 80th percentile over parts of Nevada and Utah that have been drier. Fuel moisture will be trending up with the additional moisture we're seeing through the first week in October, and also we'll see higher humidity and cooler temperatures along with longer nights. However, some areas, especially over southern Nevada and southern Utah, may still keep low fuel moisture through the month of October. Annual and perennial fuels are preparing to go into dormancy, and the higher elevations are still extremely dry because of our very poor winter last year, and these fuels will take a little bit more time to start responding to the moisture. Looking at current ERCs, it's evident that we are seeing a decrease in ERCs across the region. However, at the end of September, early October, we still were seeing above normal conditions over parts of Utah and Nevada, but these will be changing drastically as moisture moves in through the first week in the month. Live fuel moisture has been near or below normal across much of Idaho, Nevada, and Utah due to the recent warm and dry conditions, but is well above normal over the central Idaho mountains that have received moisture. We're seeing again similar conditions across Nevada with very dry fuels. However, again, these will be changing as we start seeing that deeper moisture move across the area. Currently, we are in a state of El Nino with warm or above normal sea surface temperatures off the South American coast. Forecast models are expecting a peak in El Nino later this fall into early winter, and this possibly could be the strongest El Nino since 1997. We'll likely see the response of increased precipitation a little bit further out as we move towards the early to mid portion of winter and then into the spring. The most common weather patterns for an El Nino winter show above normal precipitation for the southern portion of the Great Basin and warmer and drier conditions further north. If we look at the outlooks now taking us through the middle of October, after a wet period in early October, we'll likely see a return to warmer and drier conditions, possibly by the second or third week, but then we may see moisture moving into the Great Basin once again. Looking further down the road from November through January, we start to see those effects of El Nino with warmer and drier conditions over the northern portion of the Great Basin, and now a return to above normal precipitation over southern Nevada and the southern half of Utah. As we move later in the winter and into the springtime period, we see this above normal precipitation expand further west with greater likelihood of above normal precipitation for the southern half of the Great Basin. Again, further north will likely stay with these warmer and drier conditions. Now, if we take into account the recent weather trends along with fuel moisture, fuel loading, and the expected weather patterns as we move through the next couple of months, we are expecting generally normal fire potential across the Great Basin from October through January. And that typically means very low fire activity across the Great Basin during those months. However, we may still see brief periods of increased fire activity after warm and dry periods and during strong wind events, especially in areas of higher grass fuel loading through October and November. Generally across the West, we'll see normal fire potential through the winter months, with the exception of California, which also includes parts of the Sierra, as they may still see above normal fire potential through October and November. That concludes the briefing for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.